the table for What is going on, IB Nation? Welcome to another edition of Upon Further Review. It is Sunday night. It is 8 o'clock-ish, and we are back to break down the final regular season game, which would be a dominant Notre Dame victory, 56-23 over Stanford. We have gotten right into the film, and it was an interesting look back, Brian. And I will also say, folks, let's just focus on the Stanford game today in the chat.
Yes.
Let's keep
We have a
ourselves
mailbag
focused
tomorrow. We'll have plenty of future stuff. This is a
Yes.
Stanford breakdown.
Yes, and so we are going to break down the game. We've got, let me just say this. Let's get the defense out of the way, Brian, because we're not really going to break down a whole lot of the defense because we pretty much did it during the show yesterday. And, you know, at the end of the day, even after watching it back, there was some missed tackles. There was just some discipline kind of issues, you know, letting guys run free when they didn't need. So it wasn't a scheme problem. It wasn't a game plan problem. It was guys just not finishing the play at times. And so it's really nothing to break down per se defensively. So we're going to focus most of our energies on the offense.
A few things that I thought were interesting, but yeah, overall, Vince, I thought that was the interesting thing about the live show is I feel like we kind of saw those issues. It was just, you know, execute, you know?
Yes, absolutely.
Execute.
Yeah, whether it's tackling an open space, whether it's, you know, covering your guy the entire time, you know, whatever the case may be, it's an execution issue. So, you know, that was the defense. So we're going to focus offensively, and let's start with the run game, Brian. I love what we're seeing from the two quote-unquote new starters. This is the start number 2 for Billy Schrouth and Ashton Craig at right guard and center, respectively. I just love the energy that they're bringing to this line, and I almost feel like they're like, hey, guys, this is the energy we're bringing. You got to meet it.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? And not audibly, obviously, saying that, but with their play, the entire offensive line is playing better the last 2 games from a fundamental standpoint than they were, you know, a few games ago. I just like what I'm seeing from these 2 new guys.
It was really obvious, Vince, to see, you know, kind of what those kids were doing. You can just see. We talked about it against Wake. When we had the conversation against Wake, it was kind of like, you know, boy, there's some potential there to work with, you know, and it didn't always look great, but there was some talent there to work with.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, you kind of say, okay, well, what are they going to do in game 2? Then you come out in game 2 and you're playing a team that's not as that good. I mean, we can be honest about that. And, you know, they're playing a team that's not good, but neither was Wake. You know, their run defenses were very similar numbers wise. They both had games where they got ripped up, and in some games they played well. They're both somewhat undersized, although Stanford was bigger than Wake at defensive line. Wake was bigger linebacker, and the play took a huge jump in week 1 to week 2, Vince. And the big change for me was just a little bit more execution, a little bit better execution. And I'll be honest with you, I think a big part of the success in this game was the success they had throwing the football last week on play action. Stanford just could not fly downhill as much as they wanted to stop Notre Dame because of some of the play action stuff. And Stanford took the play action not away. They did a couple things early to make the play action not as there, and that opened up the run game. And then when they countered to stop the run game, then the play action pass opened up, and you saw them hit some big plays in the play action pass game. So, but you just saw them playing. Vince, just kind of as a group of 5, just playing well together, like that. You had that game of experience together, and you just took it to another level. And I thought the line played well, but at the end of the day, this game was a lot about Audric and the backs. I mean, Audric was phenomenal. You know, there were 3 runs where he ripped off, I don't know, 50 some yards, and they were 100% on him. You know, there was the one early run that he bounced outside. It was supposed to be, I'm trying to find the run in the breakdown, Vince. I think it was a 19-yard gain. They ran inside zone, and he literally just bounced it back outside. They ran another play where they ran like a tackle wrap, and it's supposed to hit right side, but they came down weak and blew up that side. So he just kind of cut it all the way back. Like, that play's not supposed to go there. That play's not has no business going out the back door. And Audric took it 16. You know what I mean? So it was like, it was really especially. You watched it live and you're like, you know, he played really well, but the line played great. And then you watch it again and you're like, yeah, the line played great, but it really gave an even greater appreciation of just how good Audric was.
Yeah.
And some of the reads he made. And there was probably a few more runs than I remembered where the offensive line didn't necessarily blow Stanford up. Audric just made a phenomenal read or a phenomenal run.
Yeah.
And that was fun to watch. I mean, it was a really special performance, you know, when you go back and watch it live, and it really was. And you know, up front doesn't take it. I thought Joe Alt was really good in the run game against Stanford.
He was washing guys across the formation. I mean, there was one where he wrapped around and was blocking up in front, and he took this. It was a DB, I believe, but he took him 25 yards down the field. I mean, and he was still blocking him when the whistle blew. So I mean, it's not easy for a lineman to block a skill guy like that, because skill guys are, you know, they're quick, they're twitchy, they can get around linemen, you know, especially in space. He just took this kid and just drove him 20 yards down the field. So I said this to Brian when we were kind of talking about the show and talking about what we were seeing. We generally text back and forth as we're watching the film, and you know, it was not necessarily equal parts offensive line, equal parts Audric, because Audric had an amazing game. It was special to watch, especially if this ends up being his last one, which could be the case, may not be, who knows. But what a way to go out. But I will also say, from an offensive line standpoint, when you have a guy who's running the way he was, it just makes it that much more urgent to block the way they were blocking. They took it personally. They're like, you know what? This kid is on a mission, and so we're going to do our part to make sure that he gets what he needs to get. And I don't know, they were feeding off each other, in my opinion, while I was watching the film. It was so much fun to watch, just the domination of the offensive line. And then Audric, even if there was a missed block or somebody came free, he accounted for that guy or those guys by either running through those tackles or just making a miss in space completely or missing the hole. So it was like they were feeding off each other, and it was beautiful.
Don't you kind of feel, though, that's what good teams do?
Yes.
Right? Like, and we haven't seen as much of that. Like, I'll say this. I'm going to have some stuff here over the next week, waiting to hear from a couple sources. But I talked to somebody after the game last night, and I was talking about, like, you know, like, look, what was different about the O-line the last couple weeks? And they told me, like, they're just doing different things. They made some adjustments on how they go about their business, right? But there were also some other things I'm going to have on the board where this line played with a different, like, we use the word urgency with the receivers, right? And there's a level of that with offensive line play, but it's not so much urgency, Vince, as it's an intensity that we haven't seen. Yeah. And that was a big part of it too. And when your running back is just running with the physicality and the decisiveness that Audric does, it's kind of like, hey guys, let's keep doing this. Let's keep getting movement. Let's keep getting a push and fuel this, and we're going to break it open. And it benefited, you know, Jeremiah Love. He had 2 10-plus yard runs in the game on, you know, his 5 carries. He had a 16 and a 12-yard run. But the other part too, Vince, is I felt this was one of the better overall team performances from the line. I thought they played well together as a unit. There's some plays here where, you know, Blake Fisher got beat inside. Pat Coogan didn't get a guy. Billy Stroud didn't get a, you know, there's some plays here and there where a guy didn't. But overall, as a team, I thought they played, or as a unit, I thought they played really well. And then the second part about it, Vince, was You know, I looked at I looked at the play of the line, and there just was a it's hard to describe, Vince, as I sit here and try, kind of ramble on because I'm just struggling to find the words. But like, it's almost like I was watching like they had sort of like a personality implant, like transplant during the bye week, where it just was kind of like a lot of, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do, and there just wasn't a lot of tenacity. Maybe is the word. And this
Pro-
last 2 games, we
Yeah.
just saw just a different level of tenacity, and, like, they didn't even necessarily like, I don't know that I would say anyone up front outside of maybe Alt played great. Like, Pat Coogan had probably one of his better games of the year. I felt like a lot of it had to do with Stanford not being very good. I thought Ashton Craig did some good things in the game. He's gotta move his feet better. I thought Billy Schrouth was pretty good. He had a couple big misses. Blake Fisher had some good moments. He had some misses. Like, I don't know that I would say any of them like, "Wow, Billy Schrouth was amazing. Ashton Craig was amazing." But it was just as a unit, they were really, really
Yep.
good.
Yep.
And that's honestly where you wanna be, Vince. And that was probably my best takeaway from it. And the other part too is I'm watching it and studying the film. They use their hands as well as they've used their hands all year. That's something I was impressed by. And you know, a guy that does that a lot, who's really good at using his hands. Billy Schrouth is really good at using his hands as a blocker. His angles aren't always where they need to be. That's easily correctable. But usually young linemen, Vince, they like to face hit, and then they'll hit, and then they'll try to get their hands on. He does a really nice job in this game, I felt, of coming off and getting his hands on guys and using his hands as part of the drive. That's something I noticed as well, and that's something Ashton Craig's going to have to work on. I thought Ashton kind of came late with his hands and he would stop his feet at times, but what impressed me about Ashton was once he started driving his feet, he could push guys off the line.
Yeah, he's
You give
stronger.
him another
Yeah.
off season in the weight room,
Yeah.
he's going to really start moving people next year.
Yeah. I was really impressed with the way really all five at different points in the game just worked with each other. Whether it was double teams and climbs and just the communication between them. There wasn't a lot of missed like guys let loose because of communication from the offensive line. Like I thought they communicated really well. I thought they did a lot of nonverbal communication really well, going from a double team on the defensive line up to a linebacker. You know, there was one time that Ashton Craig went from one defensive lineman in a double team over to another double team on a defensive lineman, then up to a linebacker, and ended up like basically road grading a path for Audric Estime. So it's like, you know, he was like, here, there. Like he was just all over, just moving his feet, getting to a guy in a different colored jersey and making a play. And I was also really impressed with Billy's strength. And a lot of that comes from what you just talked about with his hands, because he gets his hands on guys and then just drives them away. And I just thought they also did a very, very good job of turning their backs to a hole and creating running lanes for the running backs. Obviously, mostly Audric Estime, but they were creating some of those lanes with the way that they were blocking, you know, just getting their back to a hole, you know, sealing out, moving. It just, it's just a different group, man. And it's not a slight on the other two guys that were in there, but for whatever reason, this group of five is just playing really, really well together. And so I'm actually very interested to see what happens with this particular group and how it moves forward. Obviously, we know Joe Alt's probably going to leave, and so that's going to be a big hole at left tackle. It just seems like they're inundated with interior guys. So what's that going to look like, you know, moving forward? Are they going to move somebody out? But I just like the way this particular group of five is really working together.
Yeah, we'll have plenty of offseason to talk
Yeah,
about what the
right.
5 is going to look like next
Oh,
year.
for
So,
sure.
let's move on to the pass game, Vince. I
Yeah.
don't know that we're going to have any sheets to show, any
Oh,
plays to show today. I'm having some issues with this, but first and foremost, pass game. That was a disappointing part of the game for me. And since I wasn't there yesterday, because you and I were both at home, I was
Right.
very curious to watch the all 22 because I was like, okay, were guys getting open? Was this a situation where it was back to the way it was? Guys weren't getting separation, they weren't getting open, they weren't doing this, they weren't doing that. Was it that again, or was it they were getting open and the ball wasn't coming? And when you break down the film, it was the latter. The guys were getting open and the ball wasn't coming. And that's why I'm really bummed that I don't have the film that I wanted to have, although I'm going to try to find some ways to kind of get this, because I'm really ticked right now because we had some really good stuff set up for this, but there were just way too many missed opportunities. We've been having this airdrop issue all day, man. Like, we tried this earlier when we
we
I don't
did.
know what the heck is going on with my iPad. I can't. I've tried doing everything. It won't let me email it. Won't let me airdrop it. Won't let me do anything. So I don't know what the freaking heck is going on. But anyway, the frustrating thing for me is there were some things let's talk positives first. They won 56-23. Let's talk positives first.
Yep.
Right. So the biggest positives for me in this game, Vince, were I continue to like the game plan, pass game wise. Let's talk about some things we liked. Not a ton of RPO in this game, but some. That's something I'd like to see more of.
They started off with a few, and it felt like they got away from it.
Second play of the game. Yeah. I think it kind of struck me as like, hey, we're really grinding here. We're going to open up some stuff for Audric. Let's just keep this thing rolling. And so when I kind of looked at it and broke it down, and you just kind of get into, boy, there was a lot of stuff there to be had. And you had just some early mistakes from Sam. I thought the first interception or the first fumble, maybe he has a chance to hit an over route there in the window. I thought Rico was kind of coming open. Rico needs to settle in that window. Sam needs to settle him into the window, and Rico didn't settle in. And I don't think Sam felt comfortable. It didn't look like Rico was slowing down, so I don't think Sam was comfortable hitting the in cut or hitting the overcut into that little window, because you had a backer and then another guy dropping, and there was a nice, probably 10-foot window there, which is not actually as big of a window as you'd think when you're talking about Division I athletes. But there was a window there, and so that's a missed opportunity by Rico. But just overall, I thought as you kind of got into the game, you're like, man, there's some really nice concepts here. You look at the second drive of the game. I really liked that corner concept that they ran to Tyree. You had just a normal corner concept, but you had the over coming behind it with the deep end. Thing I love about that concept, because for the way Stanford plays defense, if they're going to take away the smash concept, they're going to open up the backside sail. And that was there. I loved that. That was great to see. If they're going to be in a situation where they really overplay it, then you had an in cut coming, which I liked. So let's see if this works. Hey, that one actually worked. So let's see if we can get some of these others over there. But yeah. But so to me, Vince, it's like there was a lot of stuff there. Some other things I liked, as I'm kind of scatterbrained right now, everybody. I'm sorry. I'm trying to deal with getting these plays sent over. And because we had some really good stuff we wanted to break down, and I don't want to get too deep into it. So actually they did all go. So now I'm going to try to airdrop them from my phone. No, rule number 76, man. No excuses. Play like a champion, right? So I'm going to try to airdrop these from my phone to my computer now, since they wouldn't go from my iPad to my computer. And we'll see if it works. So fingers crossed, man. Fingers crossed that this works. So things I liked, Vince, we saw a lot more post-snap switching in this game, which we've started to see a little bit more of in recent games. We started to see more, I'm trying to, like, one play that we wanted to show was they ran a trips look. It was one of the scrambles that Sam Hartman had in the game, where you had a touchdown pass to Tobias Merriweather, like just there to be had. And so what they did was they lined up in a trips bunch look. and you had Rico was number 1, Cooper Flanagan was number 2, and Eli Raridan was number 3 on the play. At the snap, Cooper Flanagan worked for width and then ran a deep end cut. Rico came underneath him on a seam route. And then Tobias Merriweather's on a backside post route. Well, the way that they defended it, they triple teamed Rico. I mean, they were all over Rico. This is one of the plays we wanted to break down.
Yes, he was.
They had a post route coming open, which we'll get into. I loved the play action Max Pro for the touchdown to Jaden Greathouse. So, I mean, they came out in a Max Pro situation in that particular play. And not sending. They came out in Max Pro situation. I'm super flustered right now because I'm trying to do 2 things at once. And they had 8 guys in the box on that play. Yep. And so you had 2 tight ends to one side, Jordan Faison outside, Jaden Greathouse outside. Jordan Faison came on a little zip concept. That is a duo dead giveaway for Notre Dame. Trips to a side, you get that extra surface area with the slot motion or the Z motion duo. They show duo action and they get the backers down. They actually had a corner fire because, again, duo concept. What's a way for you to blow up duo? The way the Notre Dame bounces duo. When they motion, you blitz. So it's a trigger by the corner that to Faison's motion. But once that corner fire, it was going to be a touchdown. Because what happened was you had one safety, you had 2 safeties in a corner. And then when you run like this, essentially whoever the safety jumped, you were going to go opposite. So what happened was Faison ran the corner and the backside corner stayed on that. Sam looked backside. The backside corner stayed, and then the field safety ran with him. That then meant you had a one-on-one backside by Jaden Greathouse. And their safety
can 3-4 yards.
A safety is not covering Jaden Greathouse. Sam read it perfectly, got it out there. Absolutely loved that call. Later in the game, they're facing 3rd and 12, and loved the call that they had there. You had trips to the left, tight end by himself to the right. You ran a levels mesh concept. So the tight end ran a crossing route. Faison ran a deep over route. Tyree was the slot. He ran a wide fade, and then Tobias came underneath him and ran a deep in cut. And one of the things that I loved about this game was evident on that play, Vince. That was a big play. I mean, when you look at that, it was a 7 to 6 game. You're facing 3rd and 12. You had 2 guys. He could have thrown to Faison. He had 3 guys open. He could have thrown to Faison. He could have gone deep to Tyree. And he could have hit Tobias Merriweather on the end cut. I mean, literally all 3 guys were open because of you had a high-low mesh concept to the field. You had a post-snap switch to the boundary, and it just opened it wide up. Just opened it wide up, which I absolutely loved. And so to see that concept was really, really good to see, Vince. Really, really good to see that particular play. And I wish I'll put it on the board. If you're a premium member on the message board, I'll put all this stuff on the message board. I'm sorry that this isn't that. Technology has been kicking my absolute freaking butt the last month, man. But that was a great concept, Vince. And it's so much of what Notre Dame does out of that look is either the tight mesh stuff, where they would have number 3 run like a middle and then a cross, like short cross, and you just squat on it. And then everything else that they like to do out of that concept is all to the trip side. They like to run stuff to the trip side. Well, the stuff to the trip side is not going to work. And so, some of it could work, but you bring it back over to the other side and all of a sudden they're not prepared for it. So the safety drives down on Eli Raridan's cross, and then it just opens up Jordan Faison. He could have gone deep, Vince. You were pointing that out. You're like, watch Tyree get open here. And he could have taken that shot to Tyree. But in that 3rd and 12 situation, know you're getting an ISO. That guy's got to chase Jordan Faison across. He made the right read. Down. But your point was correct that you're doing stuff that's getting multiple guys open. And we've
Right.
seen that in the last couple games. And yes, they're not great defenses, but the reason I'm excited about it is that it's translatable. You can look at this and say that would have worked against Clemson's man stuff big time. That would have got open against Clemson a few weeks ago if they would have gone to that. And a couple other things I loved, Vince. I mean, there was about 3 times if they'd have thrown the ball to Tobias Merriweather, might have gone for a touchdown on different.
Wait,
deep
I feel like we need to record that sentence because it's just on
Just
repeat
keep playing
because
it.
we've said that so many different times. But I think, the point that you're making, and it's a really good one, is that they are what's the phrase that everybody always says? Scheming guys open. I mean,
Yes.
that's essentially
Yes.
what is happening. They're scheming
It
guys
is
open.
absolutely what's happening. And the reason that matters is, like, again, you could point to and say, hey, you're playing a bad team, they suck, and you're beating them by a lot. And I would say you're kind of you're correct. That's true.
Right. That's
But
accurate.
the point that I was trying to make is what I want to see where there is something to prove and the narrative can be changed is don't just keep calling stuff you've been calling and now it works because you're playing bad teams. That
Right.
wouldn't tell me anything. That would be like,
Right.
okay, whatever. There was another 4 verts concept that you ran that I thought was a great concept, and it was much more open on that play. It ended up being a bad read by the quarterback, which we'll get into. But the reason I thought it was more open is because of all the level stuff you were doing. They were now having a tougher time adjusting to the verticals because they were waiting on something to break, which is why things were getting open. So, Jordan Faison's play action touchdown. I mean, look, they had run Jordan Faison and Chris Tyree on 4 out cuts and like 3 corners, out of that kind of slot formation. And so when Faison didn't even run a great route, it was a good route, but it wasn't a great route. But he just gave the slightest nod outside. Vince, you can almost barely see it. And the guy jumps it hard. Why?
Yep.
Because they were building to that. Because Tyree had run an early corner. Tyree caught a 3rd and 10 out cut out of slot. Faison had the pass that was picked off was out of the slot. It was a slot out. They ran another corner route later to Chris Tyree that didn't get the ball. So Stanford's like thinking, okay, corners, outs. So as soon as you see that nod, boom, you break it to the post. That's what we talk about, building to things, doing this and then recognizing they're playing that. So like what was happening is, if you look at the interception, the safety was kind of sitting on that out cut. And I'm looking at the play call. It was 3 series before, and it was second quarter. They had the 2-minute drill, and then they had one other series before that. So after the interception, they just came out that next series and literally ran it right down their freaking throat.
Yes, they did.
They called 2 pass plays, one of which should have been a touchdown to Tobias Merriweather. Just flat out should have been a touchdown to Tobias Merriweather.
Wide open. Yes.
Quarterback scrambles instead. But it was a great series because you ran it down their throat. 16, 8, 4, 2, 1, 10, 15, 6, all run gains, plus the 2 scrambles by Hartman. And honestly, I thought you had guys open on both plays that he scrambled on. Yeah. Second one, definitely he should have gone to Tobias Merriweather. But you come out the next series, you're in kind of a 2 minutes, a little bit different situation. So you come out in the third quarter, you kind of establish the run game. You're running the different concepts. You have the 3rd and 9 to Faison that converts the 3rd down. So basically, Stanford, that whole game, is sitting on Jordan Faison thinking outs, overs, outs, overs, outs, overs. You've got corner routes. You've got out cuts. You've got all these different things. And so what do you do if you're Notre Dame? You come back to that same look. You run the same kind of concepts, but instead of running an out or a corner, you have them just nod and go to the post. Like, that's exactly the kind of stuff we're talking about, Vince, that you're building to something. You see them reacting a certain way, and you come back with something different. That works, because if you look at the concept, they showed hitch, because the outside receiver, I think it was Rico Flores, just runs a hitch. Actually, it might have been, that's Chris Tyree, by the way. They went 12 personnel with Chris Tyree and Jordan Faison. Just runs a hitch. That's what if you're a safety, what are you thinking there? Here comes smash again.
Yeah.
Here comes smash again. And boom, you hit it with the nod post. 45-yard touchdown. Like, why? Because Why does Notre Dame never get guys wide open like that? Like, why? Even against, Central Michigan,
Yeah.
when they had the 275-yard touchdowns, Vince, they were getting open because
They're just
they were
better.
just running by dudes.
They're
Just
better.
ran go
Yeah.
route by and a seam route by them. They weren't like scheming guys open. Rico just out, kind of beats a guy off the line and goes. There was no, oh man, you're building to something. You're setting stuff up. And in this game, we saw so much of that. We saw so much of that against Wake. And that's what has me fired up, is seeing that stuff. Not, hey, your guys ran by Wake Forest guys. Your guys did this. It was, no. I had a buddy of mine who I was talking to who's a skeptic of the current staff. And he said, talking about the Wake game, I haven't asked him since the Stanford game, but this is how I felt. Like, if this is the offense we'd have seen all year, Notre Dame is at worst 11-1, and that's partly the frustration looking backwards, but looking forwards, that's also exciting. And so I'm choosing to kind of look forward and say, will this carry into next year? Some of the bigger games, will you be that? That's a question that I can't answer. That's a question that Vince can't answer. We can't answer if Notre Dame is going to carry this into the bigger games. But what I'll also tell you is this is not stuff we saw a lot against the better teams or against even the worst teams that they blew out. We saw a little bit of it against Navy, and then the rest of it was just kind of your dudes are better than their dudes. That's really what it came down to. We liked the pass game concepts against NC State. They did so much, like they were doing post-snap switches and all, and then it just went away. It just went away for a while. Came back the last 2 weeks, Vince. And there were probably 7 plays in this game where if he just makes the proper read, it's a touchdown pass.
Yeah.
And you're just like, okay, like this stuff is working. You just now got to execute it better. And I didn't think the quarterback executed it very well at all on Saturday.
Yeah. And I think we will get a glimmer in the bowl game. And here's why I say that, Brian, because they're going to get a reputable opponent in the bowl game. They should. They're if they're in the ReliaQuest Bowl or whatever, they should get, an SEC opponent, somebody that, we can classify this as a quote unquote bigger game. Right. And so to me, if we see more of what we saw the last 2 games in the bowl game, that's going to make me feel a lot better going into the summer and going into the off season, the spring, summer, whatever, about where this team is offensively, as far as how they want to go about things, how they want to game plan, how they want to attack teams, things like that. If we see a regression in the bowl game, I'm going to be nervous about where this team is headed. I'll be perfectly honest with you. But if they continue this, then it's going to be like, okay, I think they've turned the page.
Yeah.
I think this is where they're at, and we can be excited about it moving forward.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. So a couple things that frustrated me is there were some missed opportunities in the game. 2 of the reads in particular will kind of break down. Again, I'm sorry, folks, we don't have the visuals. So we won't talk about too many of them because it just isn't the same without the visuals, if we're being completely honest. But what you saw to me, Vince, is just a quarterback that for whatever reason is just kind of locking in onto his primary read. And if the primary read is open, he hits it. If the primary read doesn't come open, I'm less confident that he hits it. I mean, if you look at a lot of the throws he made, he just threw it to the first guy he read, the corner to Chris Tyree, the third down to Chris Tyree, the third down to Jordan Faison, the touchdown to Jordan Faison. There was no reading involved.
The touchdown to Great House.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there was one read here. It's only 2 guys en route. You're going
one
here.
Read. Yeah.
There were some missed opportunities. The first one was on the drive we mentioned. It should have been a touchdown pass to Tobias Merriweather. The ball, it would have been the ball's the 28. Would have been a 20-yard touchdown. Broke it down earlier. They were in a bunch formation to the right. And here's, you know what?
Do it.
Gonna go old school, Vince.
Do it.
So gonna go a little old school here. Let me grab a marker. But because I really do want to break down this play. It was a really, really good concept. So Notre Dame lined up, trips to the right. Okay, so let's show you guys the formation here real quick. Got to find the play, Vince.
We need to get you a document cam.
We
a
do.
doc cam. I
We
think I
do.
might be able to make that happen.
I've actually, yeah, hook a brother up, man. That's all I'm saying
Yeah.
to you.
That way
Okay?
they can watch you write it out and you don't have to hold it up
Yeah,
to the
that'd be
camera.
really cool. I would love that. I would love that.
Yeah. Let me see what I can do.
So let me just kind of draw this up real quick. And you had a safety back here and a corner here. So basically, this is the look that they saw, right? So this is the 28-yard line. You guys can see it here. So Notre Dame is in a trips bunch over on the opposite side, and you can see the two backers. You had a nickel backside. So let me just kind of get that. You had like a 5-man front, two backers. Okay, so you had two guys coming off the edge, and then Notre Dame essentially ran this. They ran a seam route. They ran a seam route by Rico Flores. So this was Rico right here. Okay. That's Rico right there. He's the outside guy. That's Cooper Flanagan. And they kept Eli Raridan in on a max protection. And then they had Tobias Merriwell on a backside post route. So at the snap of the ball, this safety and these two backers mugged Rico Flores.
I mean, they hit him.
Yes. And so no call. Could have been a call. But here's the thing. Don't put it in the official's hands.
Right.
So what happened is they were basically playing cover 2 backside back here. Okay. Cover 2 back here. So essentially at the snap of the ball, the corner lets Tobias go. The quarterback's got to know immediately Tobias Merriweather's in a one-on-one with this safety, and this safety came down. He's got to see that they're mugging Rico, and he's got to see that one of the guys mugging Rico, because he stared at Rico the whole time. The whole time he stares at Rico.
The whole time.
And he sees the field safety come down on Rico. He's got to know, I got a one-on-one backside. If he gets to the top of his drop, and as soon as Tobias Merriweather makes his drop, he's right outside the safety, and the safety kind of turns, and then Tobias just smokes him across the field. If he just throws the ball over the top into the end zone, like near the goal line, on the far hash, that's an easy touchdown. Easy touchdown. And he just stares at Rico. Deep. Nobody deep. And so he just stares at him, stares at Rico. And then when Rico gets covered, he just takes off running. It was one read and run. That's not something you expect a 6-year senior to do. And that was frustrating to see stuff like that. And part of me wonders, like, is this just like does he have like an issue with Tobias? But then we go down a few plays later. Was it play 30, Vince, on the sheet? And it's the cover 3 throw. So here, let me see if I can blow this up a little bit, Vince. So yeah, we'll do this. So here's one. So I'll kind of show you guys the look. Can you guys see that?
Here we go.
Can you all see that look?
Yep.
Right? So you see that look. Okay, so you see it's a single high look. Right? So we're making do with whatever we can, right? So when you see this look, I mean, and I asked 2 of my coaching buddies today, one including Vince. You guys see it's single high safety look? So you can see down here, this safety down here, and then you've got a corner up top there. Right. So you've basically you've got 4 down. And what you can't see here is there's a receiver underneath here. There's a receiver up here. Right.
It focuses.
And so
if you let it go, it'll.
Yeah. Anyway. So they run 4 verts. Now listen, when there's 2 kind of easy coaching points on 4 verts, it's a little bit more to this, but it's basically the same. If it's too high, you're reading inside out. If it's single high, you're reading basically the 2 seams, right? And then, maybe you take a shot outside if your guy wins. Well, Rico doesn't win. So they come off of the snap of the ball. But here's the thing. If you look at this look at the safety. He is on the near hash. Correct. He is right over top of the center. There is no freaking way Stanford has a safety that can get off and over to Chris Tyree on a go route. Seam route. No chance. And if he does, so at the snap of the ball, Sam's got to get his eyes right on that safety over top. And if that guy goes to the middle of the field, then he's coming back to the seam route to Eli Raridan or maybe Rico, but he's going to most likely come back to the seam. If that guy stays on the hash, he's right now, look him off, and you're coming right back to the seam route by Chris Tyree. And he doesn't do that. And so, and I'm going to show you guys how bad Chris Tyree smoked this guy. Like
Oh,
this
so
is
bad.
like, I mean, look, can you guys see that? You guys see how far he is ahead of
Right
him?
there. Tyree's in the
I
middle.
mean,
Yeah.
now pressure comes. You got, hey, let me get that ball out there to my guy, right out over the top, and it's 6. And there were so many things like that to me that you just look at and you're like, man, I don't know what you're supposed to do there. Like, guys, I know that's day one install stuff, and I just don't know why the ball's not
Right.
coming. I just, I don't get it. I don't get it. So
yeah, it's very frustrating, and I didn't want you to hear my little clickety clack of the keys
I got
there.
you. Appreciate that.
But yeah, it's frustrating because it's not like these are massively complicated reads. They're very simple reads. I asked a kid this afternoon that exact play. I paused it before the snap, and he doesn't play quarterback. He plays football. He doesn't play quarterback. And I said, look at this. I said, let's pretend you're a quarterback. Before anything happens on this play, what side of the field should you be looking at? Okay. You got two receivers. You got 4 defenders on this side. You got 2 defenders on this side, essentially. Before the ball is even snapped, you know you're looking to the left. You're looking to the 2 receiver, 2 defender side, period, end of discussion. I said, all right, thanks. I'm not even going to show you the rest of the play because it doesn't matter. But you know that you're working just from a numbers standpoint. You got to work to the left. And in this particular play, he worked to the right, which made no sense to me. He looked right and never looked back to the left the entire time. It was he was going here and there was no stopping him. And it didn't matter what the lineup said to do. And Brian, that's stuff that we teach high school quarterbacks when you walk to the line of scrimmage. Count the guys. Where do you have an advantage? It was such a simple read to begin with. And then for a 6-year quarterback to make that throw, I mean, that's cake. He can make that throw all day in his sleep.
Now, would the play have worked? Maybe not, because Pat Coogan just got beat and he got hit and Sam didn't see it. So maybe the ball floats. But like Sam did not go there because the pressure. Sam didn't see the pressure till he was already cocking it and throwing it. So you can't really say that. It's just there were just certain guys he locks in on and certain routes he locks in on. And I don't quite get why. But the good news is we saw from the receiving core the last couple games against teams that they are better than go out there and really thrive. That's great. And they're talented and we all know that. But to see them in these games getting schemed open, to your point, Vince, that's kind of where I'm excited about. That's got to continue. Now again, can I guarantee he's going to do that against Texas A&M and you know, Florida State and those type of teams? No idea. But I just know that we saw things in these last 2 games we hadn't seen throughout the year, even against some of the worst teams in the schedule. And the only other team we really saw this kind of pass game intricacy against was NC State, who had one of the better defenses they played all year.
Yeah.
And a team that plays a lot of man coverage. So that's what kind of excites me is like, look, we saw it a little bit, but we just saw an offensive coordinator that came out of the bye week and said, hey, this isn't good enough. And we've got to make changes. And they made changes. They made changes to their run game. We saw mostly inside zone and duo again, although we did see some counter, some power, some other things that worked, but it was still just hey, we're not going to get cute with our run game from a play call standpoint. We're going to run this stuff out of a lot of different looks. Sure. And that's where the creativity came from. So we saw diamond formation. We saw like kind of 2 guys stacked to a side. And then what was great about that is they'd run duo to those guys or inside zone away from those guys. Right. So you couldn't just key in on it. You saw play action passes that protected the duo. You saw play action passes that protected inside zone. You saw bootlegs. You saw, the quarterback. They had 2 sprint out passes on Saturday in the first half. And so we talked about this, move the pocket. You come out on your 3rd drive of the game, it's a 7-6 football game, 1st and 10. And what do? You run a sprint out where you just get a slide route open to Jordan Faison for an easy 9 yards. Love it. Love it. I mean,
Simple.
you see those things and you're like, yeah, this is where we're at. And then that series ended with the double overs off the Max Pro play action, which again I love because it was a heavy tendency of red zone, two tights, zip motion. They're running play action pass here,
right?
And Stanford fell for it, and it opened right up. That translates against other teams, and it was also nice to see Jaden Greathouse looks so much quicker and faster than he did a month ago. And that can't be dismissed either, guys, that you did have guys that weren't healthy. You did have guys that were struggling to get open a little bit. Jaden Greathouse was really struggling to get open, not just against Clemson, but against Pitt, against everybody that he played against for a while there, because he didn't have any juice. Last 2 weeks, coming out of the bye week, he's had juice and he's running by guys. And now my only thing is I would have liked to see him maybe get targeted a little bit more. But when you've got that many weapons, you can't target, and you only attempt 14 passes. You can't target everybody, right? I mean, that's just
that's true. No, that's true.
Yeah, and they played this game without two starting offensive linemen: Mitchell Evans, Holden Stace, Deion Colsey. Jaden Thomas wasn't targeted one time in this game.
No, played a lot too.
So, yeah, he did. Blocked his butt off. So those are just things that I like to see, Vince, and that I was happy to see. I was glad to see those things, and that's what made me feel good about the performance of the offense coming out of this game. Yeah, your quarterback needs to play a little bit better, but when he did make the reads, he had some big time throws. I mean, so it's not like it's not like Hartman made no big throws in the game. He did. He made some big time throws. The throw to Jaden Greathouse is a good ball. The throw to Jordan Faison for the touchdown was a good ball. He had two huge third and long throws in this game. He had Chris Tyree on an outcut for third down, a 3rd and 9 conversion, a 3rd and 10 conversion, and then he hit Faison on the over route on 3rd and 9. Those were big because those were both when the game was in doubt, Vince.
Sure.
The first one that he hit Chris Tyree on, it was a 3rd and 8, and you were at the Stanford 39-yard line. You are barely in field goal range, and you're facing 3rd and 8, and you run an outcut to Chris Tyree where you trust him to win, and he did. And then you come down and you finish that drive off with a touchdown pass to Jaden Greathouse. And then you come down in your next third down opportunity. Again, game's still somewhat in doubt. I think it was 28-16 at the time, I believe. So 1, 2, 3. It was 28-16 at the time. It was Notre Dame's first series of the second half. And you're facing a 3rd and 9, and you get Jordan Faison open, and he makes a money throw, and Jordan picks up 12. You move the chains, and was it 6 plays later, Audric Estime's running in untouched from the 5-yard line. So there was some, and then the next series he hits Jordan Faison for a back-breaking game-over touchdown on the post route. So there were some good moments from Sam Hartman as well, and I don't want this to seem as like he was terrible and they won in spite of him. Like he just has to play better, and quarterback play has to be better next year in situations like that. But he also made some big-time throws, and you can't discount that either.
Hey, the bar's higher. I mean, and I'm not ashamed to say that the bar is higher for Sam Hartman. It's higher for this team, and it was higher for this offense. And so we will criticize when criticism needs to happen. That doesn't mean that he's a bum, and it doesn't mean that he doesn't know how to play football. It just means that he didn't make the plays that we think he should have made, because we have the bar here. And as Notre Dame analysts and as Notre Dame fans, I'm not willing to drop the bar down. And so we're going to keep the bar here where the expectations should be and measure everybody at Notre Dame against the bar that's up here. Coaches, players, all of it, right? And so I think that's really what it comes down to. And so when we're criticizing players and the way things happen in a game and scheme and game plans and all that, you know what? If we were fans of like a MAC team, or I don't know, Iowa or somebody like that, be ecstatic with the way everything is going, right? But we're associated with Notre Dame. The bar's up here, and that's where I'm willing to keep it, and that's where I'm willing to hold everybody accountable. And guess what? That's where Notre Dame's bar is too, folks. Like their bar is up here too. and they're trying to meet that expectation as well. And so I think that's the important piece that everybody needs to remember. Yeah, we're going to criticize because you need to be here, and they're just not there. But they still won big. They still won 56-23. So the bar's here. We can still be happy about a lot of things, but we can still criticize as well.
Yes, overall, Vince, offensive performance, I was very happy. We needed to see this team finish with the offensive line playing better. That was imperative. Yeah. It did. And you did so with 3 juniors and 2 sophomores in the lineup. Now, one of those juniors we do anticipate leaving. The other, we'll find out what he does. But you saw the offense, the young players on offense continue to make plays. You saw your running game really take off. You saw, there's just a lot of good. You saw the scheme. A lot of the stuff that we're talking about these last 2 game, guys, go back and listen to shows we've talked about in the past. We've been begging to see some of this stuff. There's a reason for it because it's really good stuff. And so to see that and to see, like, to me, it almost looks like some handcuffs were taken off, if I'm going to be completely honest with you.
I agree.
By a week.
I agree.
And because everybody says, well, yeah, they've been doing this to bad teams all year. Not really. What they've been doing to bad teams all year is just out-towning them. Like I talked about Central Michigan. They just ran a go route by a guy, a seam route by a guy, another go route by a guy. Like there wasn't a ton of like, oh, what a great concept,
Right.
Started to see a little bit of that against Pitt. And then the Clemson game happens. And then it just felt like something changed, something happened. And my hope is that it was just Coach Freeman doing what we've seen him do in 2 years, which is when they have those type of moments, being willing to look in the mirror and say, this isn't good enough. What do we got to do to make it work and to make it better? And we saw the last 2 weeks that they did that. Against bad teams, not denying that. But there were changes, clear schematic and philosophical,
and that's the
philosophical changes, throwing more on first down. I'm looking at it here, Vince, and I'm kind of looking at just in the first half alone, you had, let's see, on first down, you had 1, 2, 3, let's see, 4, 5, 6. You had 6 first down throws in the first half alone. That's like 2 games in the past. You know what I mean? Like,
because it's always run, throw on third down. Like that's what it was always.
Right. Yeah. So those are good take. The 45-yard touchdown pass to Faison, that was right after a sudden change, 1st and 10, 12 personnel, double, 2 tight end wing, heavy run personnel. You go play action and bomb it. That's different. That's different. And the concept was something that you had built up to that moment. And that's what kind of has me fired up. So,
no doubt.
Yep. And Notre Dame is currently averaging 39.1 points per game. So, barring them just being completely dominated in the bowl game, Notre Dame is probably going to set an all-time scoring record this year for offense. Like, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So, we'll see who the bowl opponent is, but when you look at the end, look, there's a lot that has to get better on offense. There's no doubt about it. But when you look at this football team, they're averaging 6.95 yards per play. The all-time school record was set in 2015 at 7.02. Right, so it means if you get an LSU or a team that doesn't play defense in a bowl game, you're going to break that record. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
The all-time record for scoring in a season is 37.6. They have a shot to break that. Yeah. And 2019, Notre Dame set an all-time scoring record for total points in a season. They've got to score 10 points in the bowl game to break that record. Yeah. Does that excuse the things we saw against Ohio State and Duke and Louisville and Clemson? Absolutely not. It's just that there's things to build on, and they're going to have to build on it. That's going to be the key. But there's things to build on. There's things to build on, no doubt about it. So Vince, we just defense. We talked a lot about defense last night. I feel good about it. It just wasn't executed properly. Some blown coverages, but overall, I mean, I loved what the defense did this year. Al Gold did a heck of a job, and
Yep.
they had to
What a
pull a
difference
bunch
a
of
year
rabbits out of
makes.
their hats. Yeah. Well, I just
What a
want to
diff-
remind people of that the conversation.
Yeah.
Look, Notre Dame statistically is much better on offense this year than they were on defense last year. Much better. They are currently 9th in college football in scoring right now. If you just look at Power 5 games, if you just look at just FBS games, Notre Dame only falls to 11th at 37.5. They're 0.1 behind Michigan, and they're only 0.5 behind Washington. Right? Like Notre Dame is currently at 37.5 against Power 5 only teams. Georgia's at 38.8. Washington's at 38. Michigan's at 37.6. Florida State's at 37. They're ahead of all those teams. Ohio State's at 32.6. So Texas is at 34.9. They're scoring more points than all those teams against FBS teams only. If you only look at Power 5 teams, Notre Dame is 8th in points per game against only Power 5 opponents, 8th in points per game. Now, defense, special teams have set that up. Those are team numbers. Right.
But other teams get to use defense and special teams too. That's not just a Notre Dame thing.
Right.
So other
lots
teams
to build upon. A lot needs to get better. This is not a spin situation where it's like the offense was phenomenal, because ultimately you're judged by what you do against Ohio State, Louisville, Ohio State and Clemson, really. Because if you play better against Ohio State and Clemson, people will forgive you for Duke and Louisville, because they'll be like, it was a hangover from Ohio State.
Sure.
That's the reality. And so that's what you can't fix that this year. They're gonna have to prove that next year, right? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, just like it was with Brian Kelly, you're not evaluated by that you beat up on the teams that stink on your schedule. Can you do that against the best teams on your schedule? And this year, when you look at ranked opponents, Notre Dame went 1-3 against teams currently in the top 25, and the offense only really shredded one of them. That's NC State. That's it.
Yeah,
it's got to get better. But I just saw enough late in the year to make me say they got a chance. If they can build on what we saw the last two games, schematically, philosophically, with the talent they have, they got a chance to be pretty good on offense, like against everybody moving forward. Now you just got to do it.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. Which makes the offseason that much more exciting, folks, because we got a lot to talk about. No doubt about that.
That's what was. I'm sorry, Vince. I know we said we're going to stop, but that's to me why it was so important to see the last two games, man. Because I didn't want to go in this offseason like this is going to suck. And I fully expect them to bring back Jared Parker. And if they laid an egg in one of these two last games, you're just like it's almost like going into 2015 and 16 with Brian Van Gordy. You're just like, don't have the same level of excitement. Going into season with Jeff Quinn and Del Alexander's offensive coach, you're just like, it's just never going to be as good as it should be. I just know it's not. There's a level of optimism I have right now if they can continue to build on this. There's still a lot to prove, but I'm a lot more encouraged about what I saw the last 2 weeks. Again, take competition out of it. Just look at what they're doing philosophically and schematically compared to what we saw most of the previous 10 games. There's certainly things that I enjoyed.
Agreed.
And if you have zero optimism, then why are you watching?
Find a different hobby.
Right? Choose joy, man. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
We can do both, man. We can talk about the things that need to get better, and we can also say, there's some really good stuff we saw. And if your only response is they're horrible teams, then you're not having a grown-up conversation about it. That's just the reality of it,
Right.
So that's it, Vince. We got some super chats we want to get to quickly before we get out of here.
Yeah, we do have a few. So if you want to get one in, now's the time. All right. Trevor Rocket, what's up, man? Thank you for the super chat. Brian and Vince, thank you for all that you lads do. Another great regular season with the IB boys and IB Nation. Glad to see the boys rally and get the Legends Trophy back to where it belongs. Hashtag Lindsay Tough.
When did they love that, man? I hope your wife's doing well and continuing to fight. When did they start that Legends Trophy thing?
Probably when they started playing them every year in the late 90s.
Because that was 98, 99?
97, I think. I got it right here.
I'm curious about that.
Their first of the back-to-back-to-back. Let's see. Stanford.
Here we go.
97.
It says
97, 98, 99, et cetera, et cetera. So 97 was when they first started doing it every year.
okay. And so when did they start the? So the first time they played was 1925.
24.
But
24.
I can't find. It was
the
the
Rose Bowl,
1925.
so 25.
Or
Yeah.
after the 24 season. Yeah, January 1st of 2025. I'm
Yep.
trying to see like when the actual Legends Trophy was started.
You can just look it up.
Yeah.
Let's see.
So, yeah, we'll have to find that one out. But anyway, I honestly don't even remember hearing about the Legends Trophy until the last couple
Because
years.
it's ridiculous. That's
Yeah.
why. 1989 was the first time that they used, because so there was a consecutive series from 88 to 94. Then they took a 3-year hiatus, and then it's been 97 through now.
Okay.
So they started it then, probably thinking to themselves, we want to keep Stanford on the. It's a manufactured rivalry, folks.
Well,
like
Stanford had some wins back then, Vince, if you remember. I mean, they beat Notre Dame in 90 and 92 with Lou there.
Agreed.
So
but,
yeah.
So, but it's a manufacturer. Like,
definitely a manufacturer. I'm not.
So they came up. Yeah. So they came up with a rivalry trophy after playing them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 5 times.
Well, 5
not
times
a rivalry
then,
make.
But they did play 4 times before. But yes, but you said it was 89.
That's when
it was 5.
Handed it out in 89.
It was 5.
Yeah.
So
they played 5
25,
times.
42, 63, 64, and 88.
Right. So they decided to have a trophy after playing a team 5 times. Like, come on.
Yeah.
That's not a rivalry in any way, shape, or form. Is that not a rivalry? But they had to make a trophy for it, and they've actually got their own website for it, by the way, legendstrophy.com. And it's ridiculous.
I'll be honest with you, Vince. I'm torn on my feelings about this rivalry because part of me, I don't like it, but I was on the verge of loving it because Stanford actually got good at football for a while.
Yeah.
And that game actually meant something for a while. And now you look at how far they've fallen and you're just like, they don't even care about football. Like, they care about the Legends Trophy for what reason? Like Stanford. Like, it just, it is what it is. But I'm one of these things at times we're going to have to kind of go look at all the different rivalry things because I know they have something with Michigan State. I know they have something with like Purdue. There's all these different things. And I'm curious to see what they all are. They have obviously the George Shalala with USC and
they got
but like
Boston College, I believe.
They play Stanford more than all those other teams now. You know what I mean? It's just I wish Stanford would take. I just wish Stanford would take it more seriously.
They play Stanford more because of where Stanford is located, not the name of the school.
No, I don't agree with that. I think
really?
The fact that Stanford, because again, Notre Dame. Think about why Notre Dame's in the ACC. Because their whole thing is we want to be playing against like-minded institutions, which the Big Ten does not have. There is no like-minded institution that Notre Dame can play out, than Stanford.
Cal,
right? So no, Cal's not the same because Cal doesn't have the tradition of excellence that Stanford has in so many different areas. I mean, you got to think Stanford wins the whatever cup every year.
That's athletics, right? Though
I understand all that, but Notre Dame views that way. That you may not agree with it, Vince, and that's fine. But it's easy to understand why Notre Dame values that rivalry. You also look at Cal. What's the history that Cal has with football? Stanford does. I mean, Pop Warner. I mean, there are ties. It was the first bowl game Notre Dame ever played in was against Stanford. So I'm not saying you have to agree with it, but I do think it's understandable. It's understandable why they play that beyond. I think the geographic part matters because otherwise they just play Northwestern, right? That's fair. Mm-hmm. But I think you can look at it and say, yes, playing a team on the West Coast matters. It fits into Notre Dame's barnstorming, play all over the country mindset. I think that factors in. You're absolutely right on that. But if Stanford was UCLA academically, they wouldn't be having that rivalry. I absolutely do think that the fact that Stanford is a like-minded institution, why else did Notre Dame fight so hard to get Stanford and Cal into the ACC? Because they're like, look, these are schools like us. We want
I
to
get that
protect
part.
schools like
I get
us.
that.
That's
I
why.
get that. I
Yeah.
would rather have them play Northwestern, frankly,
I don't
than
just again.
Stanford. I just it's a
I don't disagree with you. The whole West Coast thing just doesn't have the same appeal to me anymore. Just because the recruiting is so much different now. Notre Dame,
right,
kids
exactly.
are committed way
They
before they
don't
even
need to
play that
be
series.
in California for their
They're
last game
not
of the season,
well, and they're
especially
not
Northern
landing any
California.
kids from California because they beat Stanford. You know what I mean? Now you
Right.
could say, well, but they play in the West. Okay, fine. We talked about this, Vince. Rotate a bunch of West Coast
100%.
teams.
Right. They don't need to play in
And
Silicon Valley.
right,
Like there's not a lot of
right,
football up there.
right. So I just I'm not in love with the rivalry. I don't I'm back I kind of would have liked it if Stanford took football as serious as they take their other sports, then it'd be a great rivalry because they'd be good at football. But they don't. And they
Well,
didn't
and I'm
even when Jim
also
Harbaugh and David Shaw were there, if we're being honest about it. Those
agreed.
guys are
No,
just
I
great
agree with that.
coaches.
I'm just very
Right.
interested to see what happens with the rest of their sports now that they have to be in the Big Ten.
Well,
Are they
a
still going to
lot
be
of their
able to keep?
sports aren't going to the Big Ten. Like, because the Big Ten doesn't have over half their sports, the Big Ten doesn't even have. So, like all their great sports, water polo, stuff like that, there is no Big Ten equivalent. So they're staying in whatever, they're going to just continue staying out west and playing those teams. Because like all those teams are staying out west for those sports. Like USC's not joining the Big Ten for those sports either.
Well, like baseball,
Right.
soccer,
Right.
they're really
No,
good
like
at those
those
sports. Those
but
sports are going to struggle in the Big Ten
sure.
because of the
I,
travel.
I think
You know what
so.
I mean?
I think so.
That's yeah,
But I don't disagree with that. My point is simply that Stanford looks at all like water polo and all that other crazy stuff.
sure.
Like they take more pride in that stuff than like Notre Dame does in like fencing. You know what I mean? Where Notre Dame's dominant.
Right.
And so, but like, it's like Notre Dame playing in the Big Ten in hockey. Why? Why not join the ACC? The ACC doesn't have hockey. I think it was something like 20 of 30 of Stanford's 35 sports aren't moving. Something like that. It was something wild like that, some number like that. But overall, I mean, I get it. I get your frustration. I don't necessarily love the rivalry, but I at least can say that I understand why they have it. And that's all I would say. I think you and I talked about this over the summer 2 years ago. I would much rather see a Stanford on every 4 to 6 years in for 4 years on, 4 years off, 4 years on, and then those 4 years in between play Cal in a home and home, play UCLA in a home and home, play Arizona in a home and home, play, you know what I mean? Like Washington in a home and home. I'd much rather see something like that than to play Stanford every year. So we're on the same page there, Vince. But I still think we can look at it and understand why that Notre Dame covets that.
This is a absence makes the heart grow fonder situation for me. Like they haven't played Purdue and Michigan State in a while, but they still got trophies for that series. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to play a team every year to have a trophy.
Well, Vince, you're not going to convince me that like if it came down to, okay, you have one rivalry spot, it can be Michigan State, Purdue, or Stanford. Stanford's like a distant third on the teams that I would choose to
third.
play.
Yes,
I agree with you on that. I completely agree with you on that. So we agree a lot more than you. I think you think that we do. I
can understand.
I think where we disagree is I understand why they do it.
Yeah, I get it. I just don't like it. I get it.
I understand why they hired Ty Willingham. Doesn't mean I liked it. I understand why they hired Bob Davie. Doesn't mean I liked it. Yeah. I understand why they play Stanford. I just don't like it. Now, here's the question. How would you rank those three? To me, it's Michigan State, Purdue, State, Purdue, Stanford.
I would probably have Purdue and Michigan State a little closer, but it would still be in that order. But
I have a great deal of respect for the reason I hate Michigan is the reason I respect Michigan State. Because the reason I hate Michigan is ultimately their fight to keep Notre Dame out of the Big Ten a long time ago. Yeah. Well, Notre Dame had no bigger champion back then than Michigan State.
Yeah.
From everything I've ever read and talking to Loose Emoji. And that's why I respect the heck out of that rivalry.
Sure.
Because there's something to that. So, now I'll say this, Purdue and Michigan State are much closer than Purdue and Stanford.
Oh, yeah. 100%. Yeah, no doubt about that.
Now, and if you don't feel you can play both Michigan State and Purdue, that's fine. Then just rotate home and home with Purdue, home and home. And here's actually not a bad idea, Vince. Do this: home and home with Purdue, 2 years; home and home with Michigan State for 2 years; home and home with Stanford for 2 years, and just keep rotating them like that.
I'd be on board with that. 100%. I'd be on board with that for sure. Yeah. I kind of wish, and I know this is not going to be the case, but I kind of wish with Stanford going to the ACC that Stanford would just become a normal ACC opponent.
They should absolutely make that, yes.
Like
100%.
in a rotation. You know what I mean? Like
100%. Or even if you keep them on, still make it an ACC game. Then that way you can maybe dump some of those ACC games, and now you have more room to pick up a Michigan State, a Purdue, a team like that.
And that's what should happen. They are an ACC team now. So that should count as their ACC game. I mean, now they've got the ACC schedule obviously worked out well in advance, but now you're adding 2 teams, so you're going to have to blow that up a little bit.
Yeah.
And so
I would advocate for that. I'm curious if that's on Pete Vivacqua's radar.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, because he's going to have a lot on his plate when he gets hired.
Yeah.
I'm curious if hey, the ACC looks a little different now, right?
Yeah.
We need to rethink what the schedule.
I would not fight. I would not fight with the ACC to keep Stanford as an every year opponent. I just don't think that's necessary.
Right. Yep. All right. Let's get to some more of these.
Super sticker from Let Manager 1. Appreciate you very much. Thank you very much.
Hadn't seen you in a while, man. I'm glad to see you posting a lot more lately. We hadn't seen you in the chats for a while.
Talking about Mark?
Let Manager 1.
Oh, Let Manager 1. Gotcha. Well, we got a super chat from Mark. Thank you very much. Well, thank you guys. Now here we go again. Who's the quarterback? OC players staying, had Ohio State beat but lost. That's a lot of information there.
I'm not quite sure the last part, but who's the QB? No idea. I mean, even if Notre Dame said we're not going to the portal, I don't know who the quarterback's going to be next year. We'll find out, as we talked about in the show the other day. We'll have a better idea on that in the next 2-3 weeks.
Yep.
Who's the OC? It's going to be Jared Parker.
Correct.
I don't have.
I have no reason to think otherwise.
I don't have it. None. I'm not giving you secret intel. I have literally heard from nobody and any of my sources that there's any conversation about Jared Parker not being the OC next year. And if anything, I could see a situation where they go in the opposite direction and he has even more control of the offense.
And he should.
If anything, I think control. They should. I agree.
Yeah.
Agree.
All right.
And then let him see what he can do. And if he doesn't do the job, then right.
Yeah, exactly. One for the Gipper. Thanks for the super chat. What's more likely? Both Alt and Fisher come back or both go pro? I kind of think they both come back. Not many Notre Dame linemen leave early. Quentin Nelson.
Well, not many linemen leave as juniors. Quentin was a senior. Ronnie Stanley left. He was a senior. Yeah, because he redshirted in 2014, then played 15, 16, and 17. Okay. So he was at Notre Dame 4 years. Ronnie Stanley played 4 years. I'm trying to remember who the last offensive lineman that left as a true junior. But see, not many of those guys. Here's the difference. Not many of those guys started as true freshmen because Harry Hiestan's big thing was you make your big jump in your 3rd year as a starter. And we saw that throughout. We saw that with Liam Eichenberg. We saw that with Mike McGlinchey. We saw that even with Quentin Nelson. As good as he was in 15 and 16, his game went to a way different level in 17. And he was the 2nd or 3rd team All-American in 2016, and he was really freaking good in 2015. But in 2017, he was the best offensive lineman I've ever seen put on a Notre Dame uniform. With all due respect to Aaron Taylor and Jeff Fain and all the great Notre Dame blockers, Quentin Nelson in 2017 was better than anybody I've ever seen in one singular year. So, I mean, he made that big jump in year 3. McGlinchey made a big jump in year 3. Stanley made a big jump in year 3, in my opinion. He was solid in 13, inconsistent, but at times really good in 14. And in 15, he was really good. So I certainly think there's merit to that. But with Joe Alt, he's in basically his 3rd year as a starter. He started over half the year in 2021. He started all of last year and all of this year, and he's projected to be, top 10 to 15 pick. So as long as that stays true, then I understand why he wants to leave. Now, I would love it if Joe Alt wants to come back. And if he thought, you know what, we had a chance to win a championship next year, and I can be a big part of that. And I don't know that the team is really set to be able to replace me. If he felt that way, great, come back. But I've always said, Vince, as a player, your priority, once the season starts, your priority is 100% on your team. That's why I don't like bowl sit-outs. I mean, I understand it. I accept it because it is what it is. I still don't like it, but I don't like bang on players for it because that's the world they live in, operate in.
Correct.
But once the season's over with, you got to look out for yourself. And then once you report back in January, it's back to the team's all that matters. But in that window between the end of the season and the start of the next semester, all of your decisions on NFL, all that needs to be like 99.9% about what's best for you. And the 0.1 is more of a, if I'm torn, then something like that can be a deal breaker, and like if Notre Dame had like 5 starting offensive linemen coming back in 2007, I'll bet you $20 Darius Walker would have come back because he would have been the lead guy. But he's looking at it like, man, I'd love to come back next year, but I'm going to get my brains beat in next season because not only do we lose Brady and Fasano, well, actually they already lost Fasano. Not only lose Brady and Samardzija and Rama, but we're losing like 4 starting offensive linemen. Like, nope. Right. So that can factor in. Sometimes, though, it's like we've seen guys make decisions to come back because Tyler Eifert, Manti, made a decision to come back for 2012 because they're like, I think we can be really good next year. And they had unfinished business, and they really were. So maybe Joe Alt makes that kind of decision. I don't know. I hope he does.
It'd be great as a Notre Dame fan.
Yeah,
but like,
it'd be great.
As it put yourself in Marcus Freeman's shoes, and let's say, he's getting top 10 projection to in the draft. Aren't you doing him a disservice by telling him, hey man, you need to come back? Like, wouldn't you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think that would be the I don't think that would be what they would say to him. It would be more of what I've been told about how Notre Dame does it is they present them with, we'd love to have you back. Here's the information. If you came back, here's what would be in store for you. If you choose to leave, you know the information. It's not begging kids to come back. I mean, they've who was it a year? There was somebody that Marcus Freeman was like, dude, you need to. I can't remember who it was. There's somebody that he kind of had that kind of conversation with. But like if Joe Alt wants to come back, then you embrace him with open arms. Because here's the thing. There is a financial reason for Joe Alt to come back. And here's what it is, Vince. So if you look at, say he's a top 10 pick, okay? All right, that's fine. Last year, the number 10 pick, let's say he's number 10. The number 10 pick last year made basically $22.6 million. The number 5 pick made $30.5 million. So if you think you can come, this supposedly, I'm just repeating what people have said. I'm not a draft guy, so I don't know the answer to this for sure. But I've heard people say this is a really good tackle class. Next year, maybe it might not be as good. So if you're thinking, well, I might be 10th to 15th, or what if he falls to 13th this year? Well, it's $18.7 million. But what if he can come back next year and be a top 5 pick and make $34 to $36 million? That's a big. What's the reason to come back? Well, there's about 15 million reasons right there to come back and maybe play yourself into a top 5 pick. Because left tackle is one of the positions where you can play yourself from like 10 to 12 into 2 to 5, right? So if that's the thought process, then I would understand that. But Notre Dame can't be the ones trying to convince him of that. Talk him into that. That's got to be something that's determined between him, his dad, and his agent. And those kind of people.
Because you don't want him to resent the program and Marcus Freeman and whatever. That's not the kind of relationship that you want to have moving forward. Here's the other piece. I'm playing devil's advocate here because I think he should go. But playing devil's advocate, his dad was a longtime NFL person, right? So he's not getting pressure from the family to go out and make money. You know what I'm saying? Like that part of it, you can kind of scratch away. That's not even kind of an issue. Like I'm going to go buy my mom a house and the whole thing. Like he comes from an NFL family. Like they're not hurting for money last time I checked. So don't have to worry about that part of things either. So, maybe he does take a bet on himself and wants to be a top 5 pick. I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know Joe at all personally, so I can't speak to that. I'm just presenting, to your point, Vince. I'm just presenting kind of, here would be the reasons to come back. That would be it. Either he loves Notre Dame, wants to win the championship, and also thinks he can wants to graduate, and also thinks he can improve his draft stock.
My goodness, how can I just say this? How much different will we be looking at the team moving forward if he did decide to come back?
Oh, that's the biggest. I think we were asked this last week. Somebody asked me, "What's the position you're most concerned about next year?" And it's offensive line because I have no clue who the tackle
Yeah,
is.
absolutely. If he comes back,
Yeah.
you know who your tackles are going to be. Frankly, you know who your offensive line is going to be for the most part. I mean, I would maybe adjust a couple things here and there, but like, I just think that, man, would I feel real good about this offensive line moving forward. Like they're going to be preseason locks for awards and watch
If he
lists and
came back,
everything else.
yeah.
If he came back, yeah.
If he comes back, I think Blake comes back.
Oh
And
yeah.
now basically your starting 5 to end the season is going to be your starting 5 next year, unless Rocco beats somebody out or Charles Jagasol beats somebody out. You know what I mean? Like,
because you got Pat Coogan's coming back, you got Ashton Craig, you got Rocco, you've got Billy, you've got about 5 guys for 3 spots, frankly, in that interior, but your bookends are set.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yep.
All right. One for the Gipper with another super chat. Thank you so much. One more. Could you consider putting Washingtonian State and Oregon State? Kind of would prefer to play them instead of a MAC school.
I think he's asking about instead of playing maybe like a Stanford or teams like that, or maybe even like a MAC school playing Oregon State and Washington State, essentially. I don't know what playing those schools does for you if you're Notre Dame. I mean, let's be honest. You guys, why does Notre Dame playing those MAC teams? Why are they playing those games? It's basically all but a guaranteed win.
I was going to say,
you need to have
schedule doesn't matter anymore.
Right. Well, no, I disagree with that. It does for Notre Dame because they don't have a conference championship. I still think strength of schedule matters. I mean, that's one of the reasons that Washington was dinged a little bit. It doesn't matter as much as it should, Vince. That I would agree completely on. It doesn't matter as much as it should.
As long as Notre Dame doesn't continuously play FCS schools like they did this past year,
right?
Then playing a MAC school is no problem to me. None.
Don't disagree. My point is strength of schedule matters, but it's not to where you have to have the schedules that Bob Davie had. Where it's like you're starting the season against, what was it like? I think it was like 2000. Notre Dame started. Let me go find that year. They had a year where the start of their schedule season was like, what are you doing? I think it was 2000. Yeah, this was Notre Dame's start to the season, Vince. Number 25, Texas A&M. Number 1, Nebraska. Number 13, Purdue. At Michigan State, and then home against Stanford. Like, what the heck are you doing to yourself at that point in time? Like, why are you having that type of schedule? And then they played Stanford 5th. Stanford finished the previous year ranked. So
they only won
it
by
just
6
is like,
points. So
right. And so you just were going through the gauntlets where when you go back and look at like 1988, for example, Notre Dame's start to their season was really tough. Michigan State, Purdue, Stanford, Pitt, Miami, Air Force, who was back then, Air Force was pretty good back then under Fisher DeBerry. Like, I know they're Air Force, and they were a little bit down that year. But if you go back and look the year before, they were a 9-win team. And the year after, they were an 8-win team. And then the 7 and the 10, they were a little bit down in 88. But like 1985, 3 years before, they were 12-1 and finished in the top 10 nationally. Like, Air Force was good back then. But you also played Rice, who sucked. You knew they weren't good. You knew Navy wasn't good. You look at 1989, the year Notre Dame,
Navy, Rice. Yeah.
Notre Dame played SMU in 1989. Do you guys remember what SMU did the year before 1988? Do you remember how good of a team they were in 1988 or 87?
Pony Express.
No, you don't, because they didn't play. Like 89 was the year after they came off of the death penalty. So they didn't have a team. They were terrible. Notre Dame still played them. So Notre Dame has always played, like, Toledo and Central Michigan would give Notre Dame a much better game than what SMU and Rice did back then. So Notre Dame has always played games like that and should. There's nothing wrong with playing those games. What you shouldn't do, I don't love the fact that, if you play 2 of those teams in a year, I don't love that fact. I don't think you should play 2 MAC teams in a year. I would always say because they are next year, Vince. I don't like the fact they're playing Northern Illinois and Miami of Ohio next year. I would say play one of them and then play a Conference USA team that's a little better, something like that, a Western Kentucky or something like that. But that's the way that it is. But no, they need to have some of those games. They don't need to replace a MAC team with a 9-win Oregon State team. Like, the whole goal is you're going to be challenged enough with USC on your schedule and the Florida States and the Miamis and the Clemsons and all those type of teams. You got Bama coming up on the schedule. In the next 10 years, you're going to play Bama and Florida, Arkansas, Texas A&M. You got plenty of those type of games.
Sure.
You don't need to then say, oh, well, we have an extra game. Let's go also play, 10-win Oregon State. Because here's the thing. What does beating Oregon State do for you? Nothing. Like, your program isn't better because you're going to go get some 5-star recruit because you beat Oregon State or Washington State. Exactly, Vince. It can only hurt you.
Right.
So why not play a game that you can bring recruits in and beat them by 40? You don't play 5 teams like that. You don't do what Michigan did and play only those teams out of conference. But you got to have some. So he's got one last question here, Vince.
All right. He says, I was super late. Did you talk about Charles and Absher and how they played on Saturday? Charles is a big boy.
He is a very big boy. He's very talented. I was a little surprised that he was playing left guard, Vince, to be honest with you.
I remember you saying
and he came in, I think he came in, I'm trying to remember, he wasn't even the first left guard on the field. They actually put Quinn Murphy in at left guard before Jagasol, which I thought was a little weird, but it is what it is. I didn't really break it down, Vince, to be honest with you. Yeah. So I don't really have an opinion. I know the first time he was in the game, I'm watching that play again. The first time he was in the game, they did pull him. And he looked pretty good moving. Then he bear hugged the guy. Like, he went to block him and he went like this. You got to get them hands inside, baby. But his first play in the game, they bounced at a run for 16 yards on a play where he pulled, and they ran it to his side, and he blew up the pulling linebacker, and the guy bounced outside. So outside of that, I didn't really pay attention to what he did. I'll go back and look at it, but I didn't in that game. But he is massive. He's a big boy. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But you're talking about how tall Tosh Baker is. Charles looks short standing next to Tosh Baker. Tosh is really tall. He's really, really tall. But yeah, but Jagasol's he's a talented player, no doubt. So that's it, Vince.
That's it? Oh, okay. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us for our final Upon Further Review. Just a little hint, little nudge. We are going to do some Upon Further Reviews in the off season.
Yeah.
But how those are going to break down, you're just going to have to wait and see. But we're going to break down some film in the off season, do a little bit of off season Upon Further Review. So stay tuned for that. So this isn't the final one, but we will have obviously one after the bowl game, whenever that may be, and we won't find out bowl, destinations until 7 days from today, actually. And so then we'll find out where Notre Dame is headed and who their opponent is going to be. And Brian always puts out an article on Mondays about what the prognosticators are saying.
I've already started looking at it, and I really thought that now that everybody's played their regular season games are over, I thought that it would have kind of been some clarity. And I've looked at 3 so far, and they all have a different opponent.
Different.
Two different bowl games, 2 were Lie Quests, 1 Pop-Tarts, but all different opponent there, each one. LSU, Ole Miss, and Oklahoma State. So It's like, well, doesn't help. So.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah. We'll find out a week. We'll know a week from now. We'll be on. That's probably what we'll do next Sunday night, Vince. Is have a show next Sunday night and break down the first glance look at the bowl opponent. Kind of first look at the bowl opponent.
All right.
Sound like a plan to you?
Mark it down. Down.
There we go.
All right, everybody. So thank you for joining us. Make sure you hit the like button, the subscribe button, the notification bell, and tune in tomorrow because we're right back to our normal schedule. And we're going to keep bringing it to you. We got I believe it's Mailbag Monday. Isn't that what you're doing nowadays?
Sir.
So Mailbag Monday tomorrow afternoon. And then IB Nation Sports Talk with Sean and myself at 6. So make sure you tune in, and we're going to keep bringing it to you guys. We're going to keep coming. So no football for a month.
About whatever Coach Freeman talks about tomorrow in his press. He will have a Zoom press conference tomorrow. So I thought that was interesting.
Yes, and
So
they announced that before the game started, which I thought was also interesting, but whatever.
yeah.
So yeah, he'll have a press conference. We'll talk about it, and we'll see if he gives us any kind of information. People were asking about when we're going to find out who's not going to play in the bowl game, who's going to. You're not going to find that out until you find out what bowl game they're playing in and all of that. Like
Well,
that, some of
yeah,
that
and
needs to be
it'll
figured
also
out.
come down to guys got to make their NFL draft decisions first. I mean,
Yes,
the bowl game will be a byproduct of that.
sure.
So
Yeah,
I mean, that'll come after. I mean, it won't even be about I'm sitting at the bowl game. It's like I'm going to the NFL draft, and if they're going to the NFL draft, they're probably not going to play in the bowl game, basically. And then the veterans will have to decide what, like Cam Harts are making different decisions than like Joe Waltz and Audric Estimes. So I
sure.
think those conversations will start to kind of happen now, like over the next
Yep,
week. But I believe the coaches are going to be on the road a lot this week. So you'll have to have them,
that's
kind of
true.
that way, and then kind of get back next week and start having those conversations. So yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So there it is. And so, like I said, join us tomorrow. Lots of good stuff. And so for Brian, I'm Vince. We'll talk to you next time on the Irish Breakdown Podcast, everybody. Have a great Sunday.